So we're going to do a little, this is kind of a behind the scenes, maybe a new angle that you're not usually used to because it's a little bit wider. You can kind of see some of the extra stuff going on here in the studio. But we needed to both be in the same shot, so it kind of worked out.
The Emperor has no clothes.
That's true. It's very true. So a lot of people have asked over the years, hey, like, what's the best brush to use? Or, hey, what brush should I use for this? And what brush should I use for that? And all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, we thought it'd be best to kind of talk about not like, oh, this is the best brand of brush, because everybody's got different ideas on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Different strokes for different folks.
Absolutely,
That
absolutely.
is a brush pun that I did not intend to make.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's I think that's important. But the real big trick is to understand the concepts behind what makes a good brush, what makes a bad brush, what makes a brush for a thing that you need, like a specific use case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do I make the choices that I make?
Right.
Basically, I don't want to. There's so many brands out there. If you can afford to try out all these different brands of brushes, go for it. I've made it pretty obvious, like the stuff that I use the synthetic golden Taklon, the larger sizes, and then the smaller sizes. It's a vast array.
Right.
But those are natural hairs.
But like what we're looking at right here, like this is, let me get these out of the way. Like this right here, this is kind of, to some degree, kind of your standard go-to?
That is what I used to buy until I found there were packs of this one.
Of just that one. So this is a 5-pack for $6. People are always going, I'm like, well, I spent $13 on this brush, I spent $22 on that brush. You do the majority of your award-winning work, by the way, with brushes that cost $5 for $6.
80-90% of my work is done with these large synthetic brushes.
Why?
I'm glad you asked.
That was the whole point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They give me more control. Your first instinct, like, okay, I'm painting a miniature. I have smaller pots of paint. I get smaller brushes. I've got a small area I'm working. Everything is small. Use a smaller portion of the large brush. As long as that brush comes to a fine point, and then you can get all kinds of textures and work done. But basically, there's an area of the brush called the belly. This is the reservoir in the deep recesses of the bristles.
Right, like about here on this brush, you see that?
Exactly.
That middle bit right there, that's the belly. And the belly is where the reservoir is, where the majority of your liquid paint is stored.
So that contains moisture as well, which keeps the paint on the tip from drying out. You can take a single hair, let's make it extreme, dip it into some paint, whisk it through the air, it's going to dry out.
Right.
You take a clump of 10 hairs with a bit of moisture, whisk it through the air again, it's going to stay wet.
And people are always thinking to myself, they're always like, well, I need to get the finest, tiniest detail brush I hear the joke about it's only like 3 hairs, and that's the entire brush. That would actually be a terrible brush to use in almost every situation.
And people using things that aren't brushes to do, like, I'm going to paint the eyeball, so what I've done is snapped a toothpick in half, 10 times to get the perfect little point. Like, just practice using a brush.
Yeah.
My basic guidelines, I like the large synthetic brushes because they have a firmer bristle. You get that deep reservoir that gives you the control. And I like the smaller natural brushes for the tight work. And after thinking about this, I realized the difference between the bristles, sizes, and types and all that. You have the large brush, and I think the best way I can put this metaphorically, right? Imagine a bindle of hair, right? I'm hanging on to someone else's ponytail, not my own.
Sure.
And now, as I move up, the hairs get tighter and more compact. So with the natural hairs, I find they tend to fall apart on me a lot quicker. The brush loses its shape. Mm-hmm. You have to reform it all the time. I'm sticking it in my mouth, realigning the point where the synthetics kind of keep themselves together longer. But when a natural hair is more compacted with a shorter length of bristle, it maintains its point, and you get all the benefits of the natural hairs being, just a lot smoother.
Right.
They last longer. They're easier to work with. Synthetics burn out real quick on me. I'll clean them with conditioner, just that I would use on my head or on yours.
Well, then like hair conditioner, like you get
exactly.
at the grocery store or whatever. Yeah,
Especially if this is a Kolinsky sable. If it's natural hair, why don't you use a hair product on it instead of like dish soap or whatever people are using?
You got to rinse it well afterwards, or do you leave it in there?
You can. I'll just dip in the conditioner and leave it overnight. Just let it all relax. Find its point. It'll help correct. It's the J-hook. Some of those brushes, the synthetics, as they dry out, they start to crank down. It'll correct a little bit that. It'll relax things, put them back in the right direction.
Yeah. So basically, you're saying that really super tiny brushes, like here's just a collection of brushes. Like this brush here, you'll notice, is quite long, but it's very, very thin. So it doesn't have a lot of belly, but it's long, which still gives it a decent amount of reservoir, correct?
Look at a pinstriping brush.
Right. Those are super long.
Yeah, very long, very thin, got that deep belly, so you can just make this endless line.
Because generally when pinstriping on cars, they try to start from the beginning of the car, go all the way to the end, right?
All the way.
So you have to have a lot of paint in your brush to make that work out.
Long belly, but there's a whole angle of approach to that.
Yeah, exactly. Do you ever throw away brushes? So just as an example, this is an old school, Citadel doesn't make these anymore, but this is just an old school Citadel brush, one of the yellow tipped ones, still got the sticker on it because I haven't even used it yet, okay? This is one that's also got the yellow sticker. Well, it doesn't have the yellow sticker, it has the yellow tip, same brush. And you'll notice that they're a little different looking. Maybe you can see there. This one has been beat to death, and I still do grab it in certain situations. What about you? Do you
got that? I like the growth on the
It does
side
have a little
of
bit of a tumor. Like I'm going to
ferrule
have that looked at. Yeah.
For me, I rarely throw brushes away. They have this very long life cycle, and that's also what proves the quality of a brush to me is its endurance. Will this break down in a week, or will it take a few months with proper care? I should also add that I store my brushes vertically. I have a hair tie around my painting cup, and then the brushes that I'm actively using, I've got some others stored away. I'll just pull that aside, loop them in there so they're hanging in a vertical fashion.
Next to your water cup, you mean?
Yeah, right on it.
So you've got your water cup, you've got like a hair tie kind of spongy, and then these just slide right in there. That's interesting.
Just strap it on there. But yeah, the brushes definitely move from this, like, the detail brushes get a little wider, a little fatter, kind of becomes a blending brush.
Right.
Then they get all kind of frayed, and we've seen in other videos where I'm painting with textures, so the right tool for the right job. It looks like the claw of a vampire, and its results are as if they were made by the claw of a vampire. Maybe that's what I want.
Sure, yeah.
And then moving along, I'll apply, like, when I'm making snow, the Mod Podge, or weird mixtures, it becomes a mixing brush. And then final resting place, I use liquid mask, because there ain't no coming back from that.
Right, yeah, I know. It's
not that I've found.
That becomes a goo brush.
Yeah.
And you're also, I've noticed this, and this is something I don't do, but I'm starting to do more. You don't take paint out of the pot with the bristles.
Yeah.
You use the back of the brush, and you dip it in there, put some on, and put it on your wet palette. Honestly, once you've beaten a brush to get to, as soon as you've beaten a brush to death like this bad, you can just start using it for that if you don't want to use the brush you're painting with. You've got like a speed thing where you're just like dip, and then you're painting again, and you're wiping it off. But if you were like dip and then put that aside, you could do that too, I suppose, on the really beat up brushes.
I've added about a minute to my life through all of those microseconds I've saved by not using the bristles to take paint out of the jar.
Right. So I guess to really kind of tie it all together, brand is not important, really. Find what you like, obviously, and because everyone's going to be different. Everyone talks about, back in that video we did at Adepticon several years back, where I asked all those painters, including you, what you think about good brushes versus cheap brushes. Everybody had a different idea, and obviously you're still using this type of stuff, and it works great for what you want to do. But when you get to the end of the project and you have to get the fine detail stuff, then you kind of switch to the more expensive stuff.
Exactly. And in this way, I'm preserving the lifespan of these more expensive brushes.
Right, exactly.
There's also kind of a separate offshoot of the brush's lifespan, where it becomes this frayed mess, and I use it to stir paint up for an airbrush. It becomes a bit of a whisk.
Yeah, I can see that.
Pour it in a little cup or a piece of that blister pack. You're mixing it up, and you can kind of pull chunks out and stuff. But that's not a nice brush because the paint gets all the way down to the ferrule, and in that when paint is drying at the very base of something, these aren't going to come together.
Right.
My hands are a brush.
Just again, in this situation, the ferrule's the metal bit here. When you are dipping into a pot of paint or anything along those lines, you really try to not get the paint as so close to the metal, because the more paint that gets in down to this part, past the belly, into the base, is what causes it to do this more, right?
Yep, you have jumped in the deep end.
Right, yeah.
Think about it like swimming. Stay in the shallow, all right? That brush, you don't want it to pass to its full depth.
Right. So, yeah. So hopefully this has helped to answer a couple of questions that people have had in the past about, what brushes should I use and things like that. And it's important. You do want to try to figure out the best brushes for what you want to do, absolutely. But there's no right answer. It totally depends on what you like to do.
I have like 6 different detail brushes.
Right.
6 different brands. Some of them are the same size. I like having extras around in case eventually all brushes do wear out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found that if I find a brand that's doing it right, I stick with that brand. But there's a lot to sample from, a lot to take from. So yeah, the basic philosophy, personally, I like large synthetic bristles, smaller natural hair bristles for the tighter sizes.
So look for a brush in a lot of situations with a big belly, because that's going to keep more material in the brush so that you can be painting for a longer time without having to go back to your wet palette.
Yeah.
Indeed. And then lastly, take care of your brushes. Give them a little bit of a condition, do some cleaning, that kind of stuff, store them right and all that. And then even the cheap brushes will probably last a bit longer than they normally would. And the more expensive brushes, if you do go down that route down the road, will also probably last you a little bit longer as well.
Yeah, maybe buying an expensive brush mentally makes someone think about it a little, care about it a little bit more.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I hope that helps, and I want to thank Sam for kind of just talking a little bit about shop, if you will, about the more technical stuff of like brushes, because we've been getting these questions for quite some time, and so I'm glad that we were able to hopefully answer these questions. Put your comments down below if you've got a brush that you really like that has done very well for you that maybe some other beginners might want to take a look at, or talk about maybe some other things that you've done to clean your brushes to bring them back from the dead. I don't think this one's coming back, but
honestly, the more discussion, the more questions we have, the more answers we find.
Yeah, absolutely.
Discuss, discover, examine.
I wish that last one had a D in it.
I know. Display.